Well, hello and welcome everybody. It's been some weeks and months since the last podcast has been out, and I think that was actually Brazil for last season, or was it Kota? I'm not even too sure, but it's certainly a couple of weeks over since then. And I'm back. Blade has returned as well from Asia, and we had the Austrian Grand Prix as round 7 this week, and we're ready to continue with the podcast series for GRL. As we heard, if you have more than 10 episodes of podcasts, you're within the top 10% of podcasts. So let's continue our streak, I would say. And Austria this week, usually quite decent for racing, but also could cause some chaos, as we've seen plenty in previous seasons. But as said, also some great racing being thrown around this week. And happy to go through all of the races and look how it affected the championship. And let's say we head straight into the top division of Division 1. In Division 1, it was a dry to wet race where Radius took victory starting from P3. He took the race win from Blade, who returned, qualified P2, finished P2, and showed us a beautiful, horrific start. With B4 in P3 with the fastest lap as well. Snipes in P4, maintaining his championship lead. Ham in P5. Dan in P6 for AlphaTauri, Walshak only P7, myself in P8, Futev1 in P9, and Josh Gidley in P10 despite the 5-second time penalty. Looking at the driver standings, Snipes leads with 122 points from Esla Ham on 109 points. Beeford on 102 moves up a position as does Raiders with 97 points, whilst Jack only sits on 96. Then we've got an almost 50-point gap to P6 in Jaeger with 43 points, Christoph on 35, Coast Jr. on 35, Max Souza on 34, so very close between those three, and myself, Atom, in P10 with 30 points. Looking at the Constructors' Championship, Alpine still maintain a good lead over the other teams, so Alpine sits on 218 points, then Mercedes moves up into second place with 135 points, Alfa Romeo on 127, Aston Martin on 119. Then we've got Haas with 92 points, way better than they were at this point last season with P5. Red Bull on 75 points, Williams on 63, McLaren on 46, Ferrari on 41, and AlphaTauri so far with a cracking season on -8 points. I mean, first of all, AlphaTauri have certainly smashed the first third of the season, haven't they?
Yeah, definitely. Minus 55 points at one point, I think it was. So,
yeah,
they're slowly clawing back to positive numbers, right? Yeah. Let's look on the bright side for them. So,
well, if they did not have minus points, they probably would be around like P6 in the championship. But
yeah.
at one point, they probably will be on 0 as a success. But,
Yeah.
not ideal, but looking at the Drivers' Championship, I mean, you've obviously gotten your first podium of the season, your first race as well, but the top is still around 100 points away from you. Looking at it, is it a bit of a surprise to see Snipes and Ham being the top two drivers, or was that to be expected from pre-season?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. I know Snipes didn't. I don't think he played last game as much, so it's kind of hard to gauge where he'd be, but we'd heard, at least me and you, I think, had heard that Snipes had been very strong on past games. So I suppose not too surprising to see him up there. He's been pretty consistent throughout this season, I think. And Ham as well. I think he's made a step up, but he'd been making step ups, the whole of last game. So his trajectory was kind of looking this way, and obviously now he's in the title fight. So yeah, we'll see if they can keep it up. I think they'll be hard to beat. They'll be the ones to watch along with B Ford Radius and Welsh Jack, obviously. But yeah, obviously there's still a long way to go. Still 15 rounds, a lot of points to be gained. Anything can happen, really. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as said, we've got more than four drivers up top this season so far, at least, because last season obviously was yourself, Beeford, Drazi, and Sora. And so far, obviously, as you were away for the first couple of rounds, Beeford is the only one who continues the trend for this season, but also he had a tough start to his season. Sora is not quite up top after a couple of retirements and a couple of qualibans after tough first round in Australia, and also Drazi not in the top 10 so far. Yeah, is it a bit of a surprise that there've been quite many new drivers that really show that much pace, or was it to be expected to be like more than the classic four from last season to be up top?
yeah, well, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's entirely surprising, but yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends on the person, really. I think still, drivers that were strong on last game are up there this game as well. But, like I said, it is a completely different game. So, uh, some people might drop back on pace a bit whilst others move forward. So, I'm not entirely surprised to see, different people towards the top. But also, I wouldn't have been surprised if the same people were at the top. So, I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, definitely. Before we head off to Division Two, obviously China next week, sprint weekend as well, and it was the same with last season, but last season it was obviously the third to last round, I believe, of the season. Yeah, because the last two were Cote and Brazil, and China was the third to last. And you excelled back then in China, known as the biggest pet track on the game. It just returned, but as we saw in Austria, which is, I would say, not really one of your favorite tracks, is it? That China's probably a good place to win again in GRL and basically prove that you're ready to get back up there again into that top five, top six championship fight, even though it's going to be quite difficult. But what's the approach then for China and probably the rest of the season for now, as you still have quite a big gap, obviously, to the rest of the top guys?
Yeah, well, obviously, I haven't been playing the game for a long time, so I think I've got a bit of catching up to do. I think I'm still missing a little bit of pace that I would have had if I had been here. But I think like you said, Austria isn't my favorite track. Probably was one of my worst tracks on last game. But once again, it's a completely different game, so I don't really know which tracks I'm good at, which tracks I'm not so good at, so I could be surprisingly not too bad at Austria on this game. So it would be interesting to see. I do like a good bit of China, so definitely I'll be aiming to at least get another podium for me. I have, uh, high expectations of myself, really, but I don't think I can get carried away and say, oh, I'm going to go winning races every single week, because I don't really think that's quite realistic at this point. So, yeah, either way, I'll be going into it 100%, and then we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at least from a spectator's view, it wouldn't be the worst things to happen if you suddenly won like three more races, because that would obviously heat up the championship fight a little bit more even, and put some pressure on the top people, because obviously with multiple cars up there, they will lose points to each other the odd race. But yeah, that's Division One wrapped up, and now so let's have a look at Division Two, where at Austria it was Jam who won the race after a post-race penalty for one of the Alpine cars. It wasn't Chimal FC who then finished P2, but it was Marnik in P3 who got the 5-second time penalty after actually winning the Austrian Grand Prix, so he drops down two positions. Then we've got Dylan Baxter in P4, so with the fastest lap of the race, he scores some solid points there, with Gente Bars in P5, making it a Mercedes P4 and P5. Beauty Jordan then in P6, Amos Lloyd in P7 after a qualiban, Jobbo in P8, Savage Cabbage in P9, which is an amazing game attack, by the way, and previous championship leader Jamie Hobbs in P10. Looking at the driver standings now, this weekend has certainly changed the perspective of the championship, as SLI Jam now leads the championship with 122 points, while Hobbs sits on 111. We've got Gente Bars on 97 points, so with some great performances recently, he's certainly brought himself into this championship fight. Then we've got Dylan Baxter on 79 points and Slappers on 78. Then we've got Jim on 72. Cole on 61, Clever still on 52, Beastie on 50, and Hypes on 47. With the Constructors' Championship, Haas leads there with 170 points, Mercedes on 146, Alfa Romeo on 109, AlphaTauri on 104, then Ferrari 3 points off on 101, Red Bull on 94, Alpine on 89, and Aston Martin on 82. So just over 20 points between P3 and P8 in the championship. And we've got McLaren in P9 with 67 points and Williams in P10 with 27. So yeah, obviously we talked about Ham earlier. Now Jam leads this championship, so they basically if they are a bit lucky, they could lock out all top 3 tier championships in the last 2 seasons, really. But yeah, we talked about that enough last season about their domination. But yeah, especially looking at the Constructors' Championship first, it looks like there's a real fight going on from P3 all the way down to P8.
Yeah, I think we've seen this before in divisions last season in season 3, so good to see it happening again. Yeah, obviously quite important for all these teams to get as many points as they can because it could move them up a lot of positions. Also important for the overall. So yeah, it's definitely a good battle. We'll see who can build. You know, obviously Alfa Romeo have the championship contender hops with them, so uh, I don't know. Hopefully, if their second driver can do a little bit better, they'll maybe be able to jump up and close to the front two, who seem to be running away with it a little bit at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we probably all expected a little bit more from Thomas, who is the teammate of Hobbs, and yeah, with Tier 2 or Division 2 basically being a tier made of AMS main team drivers. Will certainly be interesting how those two work together, because at the moment, especially Mercedes look very strong with Gente Bars and Dylan Baxter, but also Haas obviously with Jam being the leading force at the American team there. And yeah, looking at the championship, I mean it's all quite tight up top, but like in Division 1, it's quite surprising to see people like Partick, Lloyd, Cobham Delta, to see those kind of drivers that far down in the championship, isn't it? Because probably it wasn't to be expected to see people like Jim in the top 6 of the championship or Beast in the top 10 either. It's a little bit of a surprise, or is it just, as said, that the switch of the game just mixing things up?
Yeah, I think definitely the switch of the game definitely plays a part. Obviously, people might not be as strong as they were in last game, but also I don't know. I haven't been keeping up too much, but I don't know how often people like Lloyd Thomas and Partick have been attending. I know. I don't think Jim's participated in every race either. So considering that, he's been doing very well. But yeah,
Yeah,
and I think you could
Jim's
say the
missed
same.
one race as well only. So yeah, and he even messed up his Las Vegas race where he could have won, but then finished only in P4. So he could probably be P4 in the championship as well. But yeah, also the new point system probably playing a part in people just keeping finishing races and that paying off in the end. But yeah, looking at the top two in the championship, I mean, Hobbs was in the championship fight last season. Jam theoretically was as well for Division 3. And I guess most people would probably say that Jam theoretically is a safe bet here because he's just a more known driver in top tiers. Do you think the same, or do you reckon after the loss of the Division 4 Championship last season and in the last game, Hobbs is certainly a force to be reckoned with for the championship?
Yeah, I think Hobbs will be hungry for a championship. Obviously, like you said, last game he just missed out, unfortunately for him. So he'll be looking for revenge. But he's racing against completely different drivers now. Because I think during the transition of this game, I think he's gotten quite a bit quicker. I think it'd be fair to say, because obviously Division 4 in Season 3 jump up to Division 2. So I think it'll be a bit of a learning curve to kind of race with these kind of drivers potentially. But I think considering how well he's doing in the championship, I think he's fitting quite well. But like you said, Jam has the experience, racing. I think last season in uh, uh towards the end of season 3, he did a couple of races in Division 1. So he knows the kind of behaviour the Division 1 drivers have. Saving a lot of ERS and waiting for the appropriate time to pass to kind of reduce time lost to other drivers, and I think that could definitely help him out in this championship fight, as well as, like you said, he was extremely strong when he was in Division 3 fighting for the title as well. One of the few that could match Ham and I think it was Jobbo. So, yeah, I think, like always say, it's difficult to say, but I think, you know, if I had to put my money on someone, even though that's not really how betting works, because the odds probably would be, I don't know, not great, but or the returns, I should say. But if you wanted your money to be safe, then you'd put on Jam, I suppose. So,
Yeah, definitely, and also Shente's recent results, it would be good to see him up there in the championship as well, because I believe he's now won two Division 2 races and they were back to back as well. So yeah, Belgium certainly bring forward a second very fast, decent driver. And will be interesting to see who's the best Belgian driver come the end of season 4. So Drazi certainly has to push in Division 1. But yeah, that's Division 2 basically done and sorted. So let's head over to Division 3, where there was Vinicius after 2 second places. He's now won a race finally with the fastest lap as well. So he's the winner of the Austrian Grand Prix from Assume Basha in P2, Yassin in P3, we know from last season. It was good old Jakub KF22, or as Cinity would say, Wi-Fi password. Then we've got Boosted RB in P4, Apex in P5, Marcelo in P6, Wargasm in P7, The Skies Blue in P8, Core in P9, and Beatty James in P10, dropping down 6 positions after starting P4. In the driver's standings then, it is very, very close, as Vinicius now takes the championship lead with 95 points, 1 point ahead of Maka on 94 points, who didn't attend the Austrian Grand Prix. Then we've got Boosted RB on 92 points, AlphaTauri coming strong in D3. Marcelo then on 81 points in the Red Bull, so he's only 14 points off P1, so still very much in the championship fight. Then we've got some Pikachu in P5 with 77 points after him also missing the Austrian Grand Prix. He's obviously also in the championship fight with Ashion Bash on 69 points with a second place in Austria and the third place at Vegas. He's trying to continue this run of form as well. Then we've got Apex in P7 on 50 points, Cami in P8 on 48 points, same as Yassin in P9, who at least could pick up a podium this time around. And then we've got Kuroki in P10 with 46 points. Looking at the team standings, AlphaTauri, while sitting P1 and P3 in the driver standings, obviously also lead the constructors with 180 points. We've got Ferrari in P2 with 129 points, Mercedes on 126, and Red Bull on 125. So the three top teams in real life are really close in the Division 3 Championship as well. And we've got Alpine in P5 with 107 points, Alfa Romeo on 84, Haas on 62, Aston Martin on 52, McLaren on 49, and Williams once again at the bottom of the table with only 21 points to their name. I mean, the other championships were close, but this one is just built different, isn't it? Like, so many drivers so close to each other, and it would be all so much closer if some Pikachu and Ashton Basher could have made all of the races.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, top three covered by 3 points. That's already pretty impressive. And like you said, if is it some Pikachu and the Schumbacher attended all the races, I'm sure there'd be two more additions to those that top three. So yeah, definitely a very intriguing championship. I'd say this one is because the gaps are so small. The each weekend the top three could definitely change, and obviously, we know how quick Son Pikachu was in our short season 3.5. He pretty much dominated his division, so we know he can be quick, and Schumbacher is also a pretty quick driver himself, so they'll definitely be looking to make an impact in this championship, if possible. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And also, looking at the flags all those drivers basically represent, it's quite interesting as Honicius represents the United Kingdom, boosted RB Scotland, and Maka just goes for the good English flag while they're hunted down by a Polishman and a German driver. So, theoretically, 5 nations up there as well, which is good to see. With Cam in P8 from Australia as well, and Yasin from Sweden in P9. I mean, there could be so many other drivers here really fighting for this championship too, because Apex has had to serve 3 qualibans and had a 15-point deduction after Australia, which would put him on at least 65 points. So right behind Asim Basha. Yasin, if he had a bit more consistency in the races, I think he could be right up there as well, as he's a well-known quali merchant. So he's basically taken over that one from Rage from last season. So that's good to see, I guess. But yeah, amazingly close. Also in the team standings, the teams are very closely matched. But usually after around 7 rounds, as we are now, hitting round 8 quite shortly. I mean, usually you can see who's the number 1 driver and who's the number 2 driver, but for AlphaTauri here, it really looks like they've got 2 drivers in the championship. And the last time we saw 2 drivers really that close for most parts of the season, it was Alpine Division 2 last season. Do you reckon this could probably evolve in something similar, as Vinicius and Boosted seem to work well together for now, but come the end of the season, this could probably eaten up a little bit.
Yeah, it's always interesting when the two teammates are battling each other for the championship. Obviously, in this case, they have another driver in Mecca, obviously not their teammate, in between them. So I'm sure maybe they'll be working together to try and build themselves a lead over Mecca potentially. But then, obviously, once again, come the end of the championship, there's only one champion between the two of them, and I'm sure they both want to be that champion. So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting dynamic, like you said last season with was it Jackster and Distant Bard. They had an intense rivalry going on, and obviously I can't remember whether they made a lot of contact. I don't think they did too much, but
Not
they
really,
definitely
no.
found they definitely found each other on the same part of the track quite often and battled quite a lot. So yeah, obviously, hopefully it won't for their sakes become too intense because I don't think they would want either of them would want that kind of stress. But um, for us watching, we're definitely egging them on to egging them on to have a lot of battles. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, actually, that completely off topic, that Yassin seems to be a quali merchant. I've actually completely forgotten that this was an absolute lie, which I should have not mentioned because Yassin is nowhere near as much as a quali merchant, I think, than your favorite driver in this division sitting in P15. I mean, what can I say? Arti Moreno is certainly pushing along his. Is it a curse? Not really, is it? It's just lacking a little bit of race pace in multiple leagues, which doesn't help him at this point. You reckon he can get rid of that for the rest of the season and probably find himself into the top 10 as he's only 9 points off, or is he just too cursed considering his race pace?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard to say because I know him mainly from last game, and last game, yeah, he definitely had some interesting race pace, but he was pretty good in quali. So in this game, I haven't seen him as much, but I mean, he's been dropping down in the championship a little bit, which doesn't suggest that he will be. I think where was he at one point? P7 was he?
I'm
So
currently checking. Yeah, I mean, he's never been really up top. Usually it was like P11, P12, uh,
yeah,
but
so it'll
exceptional.
be interesting. Yeah, I think if he can attend the races, I think he could manage a top 10. But also he's got in a couple of incidents which hasn't helped too much. So yeah, we'll see what You, I suppose it's better to be a quality merchant than a merchant in absolutely nothing at all. So if he doesn't drop back too many places, he might manage some decent point scores in the future.
Yeah, we can pray, and I mean, maybe it's just a thing this year where Mexican drivers just can't excel considering pure pace and consistency. Because someone in real life is not really delivering. But
Yeah, I mean that's his problem is mainly the quali pace, not the race pace.
yeah,
So
and
yeah,
but on the other hand, he should at least have the best car, shouldn't he? So,
yeah, yeah.
well, we'll see whether Ati Moreno can at least fight for second in the championship like Perez does. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. But for now, I think we can top this off with a very interesting championship fight between, especially the top six drivers. Looking at Division 4, um, he's got pole. He's won the race. He's absolutely dominated the race, and he's not got a drive through or wing damage. Bright's won in Austria from championship leader Raven West in second, and Jesp on his return with a podium and P3, Nebrestrom with the fastest lap and P4, Quell then in P5, Ronnie in P6, Mighty J in P7, and Remote Banjo in P8 for Ferraris on the 8 finishes in Division 4 this week. No, my bad, sorry. I've just lost the tables. Jameson finished in P9 with White Josh in P10, Tweaky Scorpion in P11, Koyi on P12, Daniel Jack in P13, and then Sonic and Deep Day retired from the session. Looking at the Drivers' Championship, Raven West now has got 20 points lead over Bright. So Raven West sits on 118 points with Bright on 98. They've got Coy and Aram James on 88 points, Captain Daniel on 81 points, Ronnie on 78, Ayahuasca on 59, Mighty J on 58, and White Josh on 53. looking at the Constructors' Championship, obviously with the drivers sitting P1 and P4 in the championship, Mercedes leads the Constructors with 216 points and Alpine then only 119. So basically just reverse to the Division 1 Constructors, because it's Mercedes leading by almost 100 points to P2 in Alpine. AlphaTauri then on 108 points, level pegging with Alfa Romeo on 108 as well. So those two teams lost positions to Alpine. We've got McLaren on 85 points, Red Bull on 80, Aston Martin on 71, Haas on 69, Ferrari on 65, and Williams for the third division in a row with 56 points at the bottom of the table. Yeah, I mean, Ravenwest did a really solid job, but as we know from last season, I mean, when it's going well for Bright, he usually wins, doesn't he? And he's just proven that once again.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting. Obviously, he's moved up quite a few divisions, I think, this season. So, yeah, obviously he's up against completely different drivers, but it seems like he's gone for the same approach, just win or crash. And you know, I kind of respect that in a weird way. So, yeah, well done to Bright for winning the race, and yeah, hopefully next race we won't see him on the right at the bottom of the finishers list, or non-finishers, I should say, like it was in Division 7 last season. So, yeah.
Well, what can I say? I mean, looking at the statistics, it's well, certainly very, very interesting, as he's got 2 poles, 1 podium, and 1 win. I mean, he certainly keeps his statistics up so far. As yeah, also after the switch of divisions, as I said, he moved up divisions, and performs in Division 4 now as well, and it's obviously good to see. But I think he's got the same problem again. He's got championship rivals, especially one in Raven West, who is very, very consistent, with a Mercedes entry car as well once more. So you reckon it's going to be difficult for Bright to mount a challenge despite his pace, especially if you have a driver's rival who literally was outside of the top 10 once in that race and then just fought himself back up into P2 to minimize the damage?
Yeah, well, obviously Raven West has been doing well this season. He's got himself a nice little cushion to second place in Bright, obviously. But yeah, it will be interesting to see. I think as long as Raven West keeps up the good performances and Bright is, well, Bright stays as Bright, consistently inconsistent. Um, I don't know. It will definitely be an interesting season. I could see it playing out a very similar way as it did in Division 7 last last season, as Bright's rival, which was Kieran at the time, was very similar in the way that he'd always be on the podium and would always finish quite well, which as much as Bright would win the most races in the championship, because he also DNF'd just as many times as he'd win. Uh, yeah, it didn't really do him too many favors. So, uh, yeah, I think if Bright can manage to finish the races, even if it's not the win, if he can stay in the top 5, I think he'll definitely be doing himself some favors. But obviously, he still needs to make sure he's finishing ahead of Raven West to keep his championship hopes alive. So we'll see how it plays out. I think they're both very good drivers. So yeah,
Yeah,
it will be consistency versus inconsistent but always winning.
yeah. I mean, looking at the recent results of all the drivers, Bright is certainly the driver who is the closest to Raven West, who could gain the most. But since the switch, so the last 3 races, Bright has a massive amount of gained positions in -13, and he's won a race. So he's certainly continuing his streak from last season. And yeah, to be honest, it's quite shameful if this attribute manages to be right at the top of a championship. But I guess if he's got the pace and enough consistency to maintain being a title challenger, he might as well give it a go. And that's good because, well, it would be boring if he would suddenly start being consistent, because that would probably mean that he would gain back that advantage quite fast. So yeah, I'll have to see what the future holds for Bright. Looking at the Constructors' Championship as well, I mean, obviously Mercedes are quite clear up front. I mean, they'll need some problems for sure, so Alpine can catch them up. But this is probably more of a topic for overall constructors. But what has happened to Williams? The last few seasons, they've always, no matter what kind of drivers they had, even in 3.5, they're always fighting for like at least P3 and pushing the top teams. But this season, they've almost vanished. They are at the bottom of the overall constructors, at the bottom of Division 2, 3, and 4 constructor standings. And with 56 points in Division 4, that's the biggest amount of points in the top 4 divisions. I mean, as a former, well, Williams saviour, almost, that must be shocking to your eyes as well.
Yeah, well, Atom, you and I know the truth. It's because I'm not there. That's why they're doing so badly, of course. So, no, obviously kidding. Yeah, it's quite strange. Obviously, like you said, Williams has a pretty good history in GRL. I don't think have they ever won the overall. I don't think so,
No, they've
but I
not.
think
But
yeah, I think they've always been in the top five. I think
yeah,
so.
yeah, always top
I
5,
can't.
top
Yeah.
6.
So to see, well, obviously we'll keep you in suspense and show you right at the end. But I mean, by the looks of it, you know, they're probably not going to be first. I'll put it that way. If they're bottom in three divisions, and let's see where they are in Division One. Hang on, they're seventh. So yeah, seventh, tenth is probably not ideal, I think. But
Yeah,
yeah, hey ho. Sometimes that's the way it goes. Someone has to finish last, and just like in real life, that seems to be Williams. Well, not this season, but previous seasons, it was
yeah.
Williams. So
I mean,
yeah,
Williams certainly has had some bad luck. I mean, Senegos got pole at Austrian Division 1, for example, as we move back over. But he's had problems and spun. Then, yeah, I have to admit, Draz has been absolutely yeeted up the arse by myself. So that lost them a couple of points. But yeah, overall, I think Williams just need a bit more to really challenge for top positions. I mean, as you said, it's quite unlikely that they'll fight for first this season, but if they do at some point, I would love that, because that would mean they've certainly found something, which they seemingly have in real life, with Alex Albon certainly performing to another level, unlike his American teammate. But yeah, let's hope Williams can find a bit more pace and better results over the next few weeks. But yeah, let's move over to Division 5 for now and see what Williams could achieve there. So in Division 5, after penalties, it was Will RM who wins for us at Austria, so the half Austrian takes victory. We've got Drizzle in P2, Duncan on his return in P3, McMassey in P4, Erna in P5 with the Japanese flag he represents. So Blade's going to be very happy about that, I assume. Andrew in P6, Spaldo in P7, Freezy in P8, and then the DNFs in Equa, Patrick, Diamond Miner, Chicken Rosary on his return, Triangular Lamb, and Alex PC and Somans. Looking at the driver standings, McMessy then leads the championship with 72 points. Then we've got Andrew on 64, Drizzle on 62, Freeze on 59, Willarem on 44, Alex BC on 43, Spaldo on 41, Ern on 36, Uctus on 27, and Radix on 26. With the constructor standings, saying that Mercedes leads with 122 points from Alfa Romeo on 116 and AlphaTauri on 110, Ferrari on 107. Then we've got McLaren on 79, Alpine on 51, Haas on 45, same as Red Bull also on 45, Williams 9th place, 41 points, and Aston Martin with 32 points in P10. So, well, not the worst division for Williams, even though it's only 41 points. But yeah, let's move over the topic from horrible season for Williams. They've managed to achieve a double DNF at Austria, which has certainly not helped them massively, I would say. But yeah, Willis won from P10. McMass and Andrew, I think for the third race running, in the midfield of the top 10 positions, really. And with a championship fight, as it seems, between McMassey and Andrew, but also Drizzle and Freezy are there. I mean, it's a weird championship fight because those drivers literally have no connection to each other within former GRL seasons, because Andrew's won in season 2, then has been in the better divisions. McMassey was Division 7 last season, is now up top there. Drizzle has had good weekends, has had bad weekends. Freeze is completely new to GRL. I mean, what can we make out of that?
Yeah, definitely an interesting championship. Obviously, McMessy doing well for himself in the lead, but there's definitely people right on his heels. You know, Andrew obviously, like you said, he's no stranger to winning a championship. The amount of races he won in season 2 in his division was quite ridiculous. So he definitely knows how to win a championship in style. And I'm not I'm not too familiar with Drizzle and Freezy, but I've spoken to McMessy once or twice, and he's definitely mentioned that he's pretty scared of Drizzle's pace. So
Yeah, it's certainly very interesting, and as you said, McMassey seems to have a lot of respect of Drizzle's pace. Might as well be a little bit scared, as you mentioned. I mean, if I would have McMassey's pace, I probably would be scared of anyone's pace. Let's be honest. But yeah, gonna be interesting how he does in the next few rounds, if he can keep his championship lead. And if McMessy leads into the last 5 rounds of the season, I'm personally a little bit scared that he's going to be sexually abused by Andrew. But yeah, that's his problem in the end of the day. And we'll see what Drizzle and Freezy can do about that. But yeah, looking at the team standings once again, it's a little bit more spread out. As you said, we've got our 4 top teams in Mercedes, Alfa Romeo and Tauri, and Scuderia Ferrari, while at the bottom it's quite close, with that little bit of a gap in between. And as mentioned, Williams at least not last this time around. But yeah, as Division 5 is wrapped up, let's move over to the penultimate of one division in Division 6. Division 6, we've had Milk Cow, aka NJ, winning for Alfa Romeo, with Kieran in P2, 10th Cannon in P3, Opal in P4, Lexus in P5, Echo in P6 after a penalty, Adam in P7, Azrael also being there, and apparently Adam in P8, but that's certainly a mistake because there was only one Adam. But yeah, I'm sure we figured that out already. While in the driver standings, we have Milkow leading with 106 points, 10th Cannon then on 90 points in P2, Lexus then on 62 points with Callum Ladlow on 60, Kieran UTM only on 50 points, then Lotus on 48, same as Pat Bader, then a very washed Arwen Graney with 43 points in P8, Echo on 42, and J Street on 40. Looking at the Division 6 team standings, we can see Alfa Romeo leading with 130 points from Ferrari. 6 points the gap there as Ferrari sits on 124 points with Haas on 119, McLaren 103, Mercedes on 101, Alpine on 97, AlphaTauri on 88, Aston Martin on 80, Red Bull on 72, and you will not believe it, Williams, bottom of the table, 68 points. They simply do not learn. So, looking at the Drivers' Championship, I mean, Milka obviously has got a 5 points deduction as well this season. It is not this season, this week, which certainly helps 10th Cannon. But yeah, the race result speaks for itself as NJ could maintain the gap or even extend it this week. What do you think about that? Do you think Milkow has got a pace advantage over the rest, or is that just in Division 6 right now about survival and be there or thereabout?
Well, looking at the previous races, I think I'm trying to find him. But it seems like his two names. Anyway, it seems like he's definitely been doing better in the more recent races. Um, I think Monza, it looks like he did pretty well qualified up there, but in Spain, it says he qualified 16th, but still managed to win, so that's an impressive performance. Yeah, it looks like he definitely has some good pace. He seems to be there or thereabouts in quali, and his race pace seems even better. So, you know, that's probably what you want to aim for if you want to win a championship. Have good race pace. I think 10th Can in P2 is keeping him honest. You know, he's not too far behind within a race win away, but NJ Milk Cow or whatever his name is. Yeah, he's definitely there's definitely smaller margins in other divisions, let's say that, and those two have quite a big gap to third place. So I think, at least for now, those two will probably be having an eye on each other rather than everyone else.
Yeah, certainly, and at least 10th Cannon is keeping him honest, as you said, because that keeps the championship more open and viable for a couple more drivers as well. And they're also the spectators. Yeah, and as said, with the switch as well, there've been switches in points and everything. But yeah, looking at the driver standings, it seems to be between those two drivers for now, despite Lexus, Callum Ladler, and Kieran obviously having a solid pace. Yeah, in the team standings, it looks like Ferrari have a quite solid lineup actually in Callum Ludlow and his teammate in Lino now. But yeah, looks like Callum Ludlow is the leading force for his team. Do you reckon as a team it's possible to fight Alfa Romeo here, or especially with Milkhouse seeming to have the edge on the other drivers, that Alfa Romeo is in the clear advantage here?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. Certainly, it's been closer than other divisions for the standings. So I definitely wouldn't say, it's over. But I mean, they're looking strong. Definitely, they've overtaken Ferrari. I think, gained 11 points on them. No, 12. No, 11. 11 points on them from last weekend. So yeah, obviously they're doing well, but it's certainly not over. I think, the other divisions, like, for example, Division 1, there's quite massive gap between first and second place. It's nothing like that in this division. So, um, yeah, this is one where we need to watch and see what happens. Obviously, Alfa Romeo with the strong lineup could pull away from P2, but it's not like in Division 1 where we probably won't need to worry about the Constructors' title for the rest of the season, considering the gap. So it's definitely quite interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And as said, Haas, McLaren, Mercedes, as maybe Alpine are still in this fight, especially if they have two consistent drivers performing week in, week out. But yeah, that's Division 6 wrapped up. It's certainly closer than it was at this point last season, where Akio started dominating from around here. And now let's move over to the bottom F1 division, which is Division 7, where actually, well done, Lewis Hamilton's brother has won the Austrian Grand Prix. Leo Hamilton, you will not believe it, in a Williams has won with Cian in P2, Reiston in P3, Mike Reid in P4, A-Sky in P5, Gaza Buchanan in P6, the absolute bottom division hero in Browns the Buns in P7, Moss in P8, SLR Vettel in P9, and Will MCM for Ferrari in P10. Looking at the Drivers' Championship, this means Stubbseed leads with 81.5 points despite a DNF. Then we've got X Flasher with 76.5 points in P2, Cian then in P3 with 76 points, so only half a point behind X Flasher. Then we've got Gaza Buchanan on 65.5 points in P4. Leo Hamilton moving up 6 positions with 63 points now in P5. Browns the Buns in P6 with 59 points. Moss with 56 in P7. A-Sky with 55 in P8. Level points with Mike Reid in P9. And Ed with 46.5 points, dropping a couple positions, but he's in P10 for Alpha Tauri. And looking at the team standings, amazing stuff. Williams leads the team standings, the constructor standings in Division 7 with 146 points. So they finally found a division where they can really excel, with Haas in P2 on 131.5 points, McLaren in P3 with 123, Ferrari in 112.5, Alpine on 110.5, Alfa Romeo on 85, Alpha Tauri on 76.5, Mercedes on 73, Red Bull on 57.5, and Aston Martin on 21.5. What a turnaround! They have literally scored more points in Div 7 than they've scored in the other 6 altogether. How?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even race for them anymore, and I've got tears in my eyes. This is a beautiful moment and will ever be written in GRL history. So, yeah, they're doing pretty well for themselves. Obviously, they have the famous Leo Hamilton, Lewis Hamilton's Australian brother, it seems. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, you can't go wrong with that lineup, and yeah, that's why they're P1. So yeah, beautiful stuff, and let's hope, for Williams' sake, that they can keep this up at least in this division, because they'll probably be last in all the other ones.
I mean, that's confidence right there. But can't blame you really, because yeah, looking at this, they've scored around a third of Williams's points in Div 7, which is, considering there are 7 divisions, not ideal. But yeah, I guess you got to take the positives, which is the constructors lead in Division 7, and well, it's still far from over, not only because we've only done 7 rounds, but also because there are multiple teams that have scored more than 100 points. So they certainly need to be on their toes, and obviously the win of Leo Hamilton has certainly helped Williams there. I mean, there have also been some interesting discussions in the Div 7 paddock, because the new teammate of Leo Hamilton obviously is A-Sky, and Mike Reed seemingly was on to win this Grand Prix for Haas, which would have turned things around, obviously, by a 10-point swing. But apparently, Ace Guy was trying his hardest to avoid Mike Reed winning this Grand Prix to make Lewis Hamilton get P1. Not really within the boundaries as well. So the Italian driver must have certainly not made friends with Mike Reed there. I mean, that's certainly not ideal, but I guess it's probably what it takes when you're that far down in the constructors, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe he was taking some tips from another famous GRL Italian. I believe he raced in Division One and Division Two last season, and yeah, his GRL career ended with quite an impact with the wall. So yeah, interesting tactics, obviously. I'm sure Williams won't be complaining, even though I don't know what fate the driver met with the stewards, but it probably wasn't very favourable, let's put it that way.
Well,
Um,
I can tell you actually. Well, if I scroll up to the good old Division 7 stewarding decisions, good old Ace has ended up with a couple of penalty points as far as I'm aware. So here we go. So a reprimand plus 5 second time penalty. So that's 3 penalty points. Then a reprimand plus a 10 second time penalty. So that's 6 penalty points and a 15 second time penalty. Well, the 6 penalty points already cause a quali ban. And then another reprimand, making 9 penalty points and a 5 second time penalty, including an admin ticket, considering a race ban to a Sky. So, well, he's received 20 second of time penalties, a race ban for China, and a quali ban for, I think that is Sandvoort. So, overall, probably not ideal for the Constructors' Championship.
yeah. Well, let's look at the bright side, and at least you finished the race and didn't get points deductions instead.
Yeah. I mean, I can quote the man actually, as he said, "My goal was to hold you up so you couldn't win." To Mike Reid. I mean, I guess he would have been best off with just keeping that to himself. But yeah, I mean, it's just for Mike Reid himself, it doesn't really help him, as he had the pace to win his first GRL race. But yeah, Division 7 always was chaos, and I think it will forever remain chaos. Um, but yeah, with two Frenchmen leading the championship now, with Stubbsy and Max Flasher, and then we've got the Dutchman of Cian, but also a former Division 5 driver in Gaza in P4. So it's all really close here. Looking at the top nine here, there's a gap less than 30 points between the top nine, and I think that's really what you want to see. Especially looking at the bottom divisions, as usually the gaps there are quite a bit bigger than in the top ones.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think it was Division 5, a lot of the points have been quite evenly distributed between a lot of drivers in the standings, which obviously makes it a lot more interesting, you know. Um, for example, someone out of nowhere towards the bottom end of, the top eight, top nine could get a good result, and all of a sudden they'll jump up a good 3, 4, 5 positions, and will look like they're in title contention. So yeah, definitely. Well, I think proving that point, Leo Hamilton, the Australian driver, moved up 6 positions thanks to his race win. So yeah, definitely very close. We'll definitely see some chopping and changing, I think, in this division. So I think quite exciting to see where it goes.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, before we head over to overall constructors, well, actually considering the overall constructors, I wanted to have a look at some certainly very interesting stats as looking at the overall constructors. For example, Ferrari is the team that has gained the most positions over the course of the season of 180. Williams, who are last in overall constructors, sits seventh here, so they've suddenly gained position. So maybe the quali pace is a bit of an issue as well, even though it's the races where they lack the points. So Ferrari and Mercedes look to be the top teams considering gain positions. So do McLaren. So McLaren's further down the order, so maybe they are also struggling in quali trim. And quickly looking at the drivers, considering the gained positions, Cintium, for example, a title challenger at this point, really in Division 6, has an amount of gained positions of -33, which is not ideal for a championship contender. But yeah, I guess he'll have to work on that. And then one more stat looking at the gained positions of Division 1. Sora's had 5 quali bans, I believe, while Beeford had 0, but Beeford yet still gained more positions than his former championship rival. So this can go really two ways. Either Sora's not gained many positions off his quali bans, or Beeford's qualifying is still quite bad, but I'm not going to make a comment here. I'm just going to hold back and enjoy while we look at the actual overall Constructors' Championship, where Mercedes leads with 996 points from Alfa Romeo on 845. We've got Alpine on 776.5, with Haas on 731.5. AlphaTauri then in P5 on 717.5, with Ferrari on 673.5. Red Bull then around about 100 points off in P7 with 580.5. Then your McLaren boys in Papaya with 578 points, Aston Martin 552.5, and Williams on 500. And because it's been a great topic throughout this whole podcast, I have to say, actually, considering they are literally 10th in 4 or 5 of the Constructors' Championships, Williams is not that far off P7.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty surprised looking at it myself. Um, well, I think that means less that Williams are doing actually quite well, and more that Aston Martin, McLaren, and Red Bull are doing pretty awfully as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, uh, I mean, it is definitely interesting. Obviously, it looks like it will be those four battling for the wooden spoon. So, um, yeah, we will. We'll see if Williams can promote themselves from the bottom of the table. I think who was it? Who was it? I think in season 3 it was Haas that were at the bottom.
Yeah,
I think
Haas and
the Williams
AlphaTauri.
are AlphaTauri, was it?
No, it was Haas
Uh,
and AlphaTauri that were at the bottom.
oh yeah,
They were
yeah.
always fighting it out, but AlphaTauri, I believe, had a very strong end to their season. That's why
Yeah.
they actually managed to be quite solid looking at the season 3 overall constructors. Yeah, Haas were last, AlphaTauri were 9th, Red Bull was 8th, Mercedes 7th, Ferrari 6th, Alfa Romeo P5, McLaren P4, Williams P3, Aston Martin P2, and Alpine P1. So Aston Martin has actually dropped loads. So is Williams. So is McLaren. So yeah, all three of them. And the Mercedes engine is only working actually for the factory.
Yeah, for the works team, yeah. Yeah. Interesting, very interesting. But yeah, obviously now I'm racing for McLaren. Quite has a quite rich GRL history, I'd say. So
Yeah.
hopefully, hopefully we can move up a little further in the standings if if possible. So we'll definitely see how it goes for us, and yeah, I'm sure that's what all of the other teams will be thinking. And obviously, one more thing, I think Mercedes are looking pretty good to break the 1,000 points mark in China. I think yeah, which is pretty impressive. I know. I think at the start of the season, we weren't thinking Mercedes would have the best overall constructors campaign, but here they are, leading the way. So yeah, they'll definitely be hoping that continues.
Yeah, well, I remember once again my amazing pre-season predictions when I said I think Mercedes has got the worst lineup.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought Aston Martin, Williams, and Red Bull, I think I said, look very strong. Well, that's what I said.
Yeah.
I might as well just predict something and then turn it around next season. Would work out way better.
Yeah. I think to be honest, anyone you predict doing well is in danger, really. So.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
for the rest of their lives. I mean, But yeah, what I wanted to say is it's actually quite remarkable because, considering the perspective of Mercedes, because usually we said 100 points per week is a good aim, was last season. Obviously, we've got more points, so you could probably raise that to 120 points, maybe around. Um, and we've done 7 rounds, and they're sitting on basically 1k points, which is absolutely ridiculous. But also, after 21 rounds last season, the 10th place finisher Haas was sitting on 1.3k points. So Mercedes is not far off that after 7 rounds. So I'm quite certain if they continue the form, they can certainly break the record of points Alpine did last season, as we also got one more race in this season. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think basically every team will improve their points tally compared to last season. I'm quite comfortable Haas will, because they basically only need to do the same thing 7 times again, and they'll be further ahead than they were. Maybe Williams could potentially be struggling a little bit because they've got like 1,700, so they certainly need to get a move for sure. But yeah, as I said, I think it's between Mercedes and Alfa Romeo for now, but maybe Alpine, Haas, or AlphaTauri can catch them back up, and maybe at one point we'll see Haas versus AlphaTauri at the top, which basically was the battle for the wooden spoon last season. But yeah, to top this basically off, we are going to talk about something that has got no valid results yet, which is Austria Formula 2, because Blade was back and he can now finally talk about it again. Well, first of all, the sprint is basically my part, because you were part of the Cup Series race, which I heard was a very clean and great race, as you saw how
Yeah.
many cars getting straight lines.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it was about as clean as a dumpster fire, really. Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I think if that was a real life race, there'd probably be a lot of dead people. So let's just put it that way.
Well, so that sounds very comfortable. Talking about comfortable, Formula 2 in Austria. So, Atoms and myself got pole because of Vinicius, who had some great pace in the recent races, invalidated a very fast lap at the final corner at Austria, which is obviously quite easy to do. And then McMessy took the second spot on the front row, half a second off P1, but yeah, still P2 for him. But yeah, the sprint race was fully dry in the end, even though the game said it could be wet in the end, but it wasn't. Everyone bar McMessy on the yellow marked medium tyre, while McMessy went on to the super soft, like he did in basically all the other sprint races in recent weeks. But probably a fair shot is it to go just on the softer compound sprint race if you're further down in the standings, to just maybe get the tyre through and win a race? Or do you think it's just best to go medium anyways, or is the super soft even a viable option for the sprint?
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to say because obviously I haven't done much Formula 2. But if I think about the feature race which I raced in, I did, I think, 9 laps on the super soft, and there's 12 in the sprint. Obviously, well, this is a bit spoiling the feature race, but you pitted a lot later than I did, and your tyre advantage was pretty significant. So, yeah, I think even though the super softs could be a lot quicker at the start of the race, I think towards the end, you definitely struggle compared to what's the other set? Medium, I think
Yeah,
it is.
medium. Yeah, it's always two
So,
tires. Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're feeling audacious, I think you could go for the super soft, but I think you'd need a pretty good reasons to it. Like, for example, you have a massive pace advantage and don't want to be in all the carnage at the start of the race and then nurse your tyres at the end, even though you'll be losing time to the cars behind. Maybe you would have made enough time that people can't catch you by the end. But like I said, I'm not really an expert considering I haven't even done a sprint race in Formula 2 on this game yet. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, in the end, it was myself getting the sprint race win from Mack in second, who kept his nose clean as well. And I actually don't fully know who got third place. I think it might have been McMessy in the end. But yeah, quickly before we talk about the feature, I mean, there's it's one thing starting on the super softs like McMessy did, but it's another thing which also McMessy did is going under the safety car in the sprint race from one set of super softs to the other fresh set of super softs. So basically, waste two sets. The two sets you have
Yeah.
in that one race. I mean, not ideal, is it?
Yeah, I messaged him after the race to say, yeah, well done on the podium, but you do realise you have no sets of super softs left for the race, and I think if I remember correctly, he said that he knows. So, yeah, I think it was a strategical decision from his half that probably he thought that this was his best chance to get a podium result, and he probably wasn't expecting it in the feature, so he went for the podium in the sprint instead of going for a more normal strategy in the feature race, which I don't I don't really know whether that's the best strategy, but I mean he got a podium out of it, so not too
Yeah.
bad there.
I mean, it's
And I
quite
guess
weird because in the sprint he started P9, while in the feature he was set for P2 on the grid. So basically, you would assume if you start from P2, it's way more likely to get a podium than when you start from P9 behind others. At least that's my
yeah,
approach.
yeah. Well, it was an interesting strategy, but I guess it worked if he got a podium in the end. Maybe we thought he was going to get taken out in the feature or something. So,
Understood. So we've got an optimistic blade here today.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay.
But, yeah. I mean,
Yes.
who knows what could have happened, but he definitely probably threw away some points in the feature. That's for
Yeah.
sure. So, I mean,
Yes.
what?
He had
He got
two.
disqualified in the end in the feature, didn't he? So,
Yeah. Well, talking about McMessy lets it over to the feature where obviously I was in pole position. McMessy was in second. I think you started 13th,
Was
14th, something like
yeah,
that.
last
Yeah.
nice and cozy in last place in the Red Bull liveried ART,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah,
So
Red Bull Limited ART. Obviously from Westy or Porsche. Find it out. Who of them is the Red Bull driver? We'll not tell you the answer. But yeah, I could maintain my position because, as mentioned, McMessy's super softs weren't that soft anymore. Um, yeah, so I could maintain the position. McMessy pitted on lap 2, which obviously, according to the mandatory pit stop, is too early to serve the mandatory pit stop, which caused him to getting disqualified later. But yeah, that's not too important for our actual race because behind me, I think it was Tran on the super softs, then it was Somans on mediums, Avenicius on mediums, and yourself on mediums, basically battling it out for the rest of the race. Well, you passed them and they battled. Um, because I think especially Avenicius and Somans were fighting with each other, while I think it took you more than one stint to pass Tran, correct?
if he was the guy in
Yeah,
second,
he was in the Trident
yeah,
hybrid.
he started on the super soft, I remember. So I think I got into third. And then obviously he pitted earlier than I did, so obviously got a bit of an undercut. And then when I switched on the super softs, I overtook him, which didn't take too long because it felt like the super softs were quite a lot quicker than the mediums. So yeah, I think well, to be honest, everything went according to plan really for my race. So I kind of it wasn't as easy as China in season 3, where I basically went from 10th to first in one sector. But um, yeah, I gradually fought my way up the field. I think to about P3 by lap, I believe, I want to say about 5, but it might have been a little later. Definitely before Tron pitted, so that I'd say that's about lap 8 or 9. So definitely around then. And then after that, after I got past him, it was a bit of a lonely race for me. So yeah,
Yeah, it was indeed. Basically, past Tran, then though with amazing pace undercut me, or let's say I cost
yeah,
myself some time by pitting really late, waiting for that fastest lap attempt, and I exited the pits behind you. Got a little bit of DRS assistance past you, I think, after 2 laps. And then use
yeah,
this massive tire advantage to go literally 100th quicker than your time, um, which was thoroughly deserved. But yeah, I think I could have probably squeezed a better time out of those tires as well. While I think yours were, after I passed you, pretty much done. At least it looked like it, especially in the middle sector, because I think there was like a 7-second gap in the end, especially because I think you got the time penalty as well for corner
yeah,
kick.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, not ideal, but 1-2 for ART. And
yeah, good stuff.
yeah, indeed. Because when I look at the Formula 2 Championship, I mean, this is obviously not updated yet for Austria and Vegas, but estimating I should be, yeah, I am first, and you should be, I think, 7th in the championship, just behind Mali. So,
Yeah,
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 around
not
10th.
too bad.
Not too bad
Not
at
too
all,
bad. Yeah,
really. And around, let me think, around 150 points off P1, which is obviously.
yeah. That's not so good, but
Well,
we
we've
move.
got, looking at the calendar, we've still got China, Baku, France, Spa, Bahrain, Texas, Abu Dhabi, and Brazil. Um, and Miami, obviously, which is the third to last round. So yeah, that will be very interesting whether you can at least get up to second place because yeah, Gibson wasn't here this week, Dara wasn't, and Beeford wasn't either. So that's why also we had basically no speeding in the pit lane penalties because Gibson wasn't here. Quite a shame, really, because we're all breaking in time for the pit entry, really. But yeah, that's F2 done as well, and that's basically all of the Austria races sorted. So that's the first podcast of season 3 finished, basically. Yeah, I'm not gonna race to China next week, so yeah, Blade. What can we expect from China, which probably isn't one of the fan favorites, but I think as a racing track, it's probably one of the top ones.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier in the podcast, I do love a good bit of China. It's definitely one of my better tracks. At least it was on last game. I don't know about this game, but we'll find out in, oh, it's, this is Sunday, so,
Tomorrow.
in tomorrow's time, yes. Probably about 20 hours time-ish. No, that's when the race starts. Wait, is it? I don't know. Who cares? Yes, we'll find out. I think it will be an interesting race throughout all divisions. I know in Division 1 we have some quick reserves that will be racing, so yeah, will definitely be interesting. Sometimes there can be a bit of weather in China as well. I think season 3 China was intermediates the whole race, was it? I think.
No, it wasn't,
Was it
because
not?
I remember it was basically, it said full wet all race.
Oh yeah, I
We had
remember
to
that.
start on
Yeah,
slicks and basically guess when the rain comes
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
there were
yeah,
only
yeah.
clouds.
Yeah, I remember now because most of us started on mediums, apart from I think it was Bourbon who started on the hards, which cost him quite a bit of time. So yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
We also remember
So
that Beeford used it. At
oh
the end.
yeah, indeed he did. Maybe a little too late. He could have probably made a bit more time if he'd done it earlier.
Well, that was certainly a defining championship moment. But yeah, China, I think definitely great spectacle every season for sure. Obviously, going to be interesting how many people will lose it at the famous Lego corner. Is
Oh
the
dear.
third to last
The
corner.
one, the one bad corner on the track, the Lego corner.
Well,
Well, yeah.
that's gonna be interesting. I mean, I'm gonna watch this one for sure, especially the Division 1 race, as I think the quali last season was crazily close. There were like 11 cars within 3 tenths, and China isn't even a short track either. So yeah, it will be interesting. A couple of reserves. We can only hope that Williams gets some solid reserves in any of the divisions, except Australia. Um, but we can pray for them to get back up the order. But yeah, as I said, this is this podcast sorted, and I said thanks to Blade, and we'll hopefully speak to you next week when GRL returns.